Hi there, my name's Shannon Beatty, and I am a capstone student from Huntington University. We are a satellite campus here in Peoria, Arizona. And for my capstone project, I chose to work with Oakwood Creative Care and understand the COPE program. So part of my deliverable was to get licensed in the program. And I worked with my mentor, Monica, out here in Mesa, Arizona. And the reason I chose to create the CEU course was because as a student developing my capstone, we had not covered geriatrics prior to choosing a topic. And this made me feel overwhelmed because I have a passion for working with older adults. I worked with my teachers to find outside courses and a mentor to talk to regarding dementia care, and was able to develop my project from there. My hope is that this information informs and encourages future occupational therapists to consider a role in dementia care. So this is the beginning of our topic today. So fun fact that we have here is every 3 seconds, an individual is diagnosed with dementia, and over 50 million people worldwide are living with this chronic terminal condition. This number is expected to increase to 75 million in 2030 and 132 million by 2050. So over 16 million families in the US provide support and long-term care to persons with dementia. So those are some big numbers. So the objectives for this presentation today are to define dementia, including key characteristics, talk about caregiver burden and the growing problem in our nation, specifically in Arizona. We're going to identify opportunities to address this growing problem with the use of the COPE program. We're going to identify key benefits and outcomes to the implementation of the COPE program. I'm going to explain occupational therapy's unique role in the implementation of the COPE program. And looking ahead, we're going to talk about how you can join a dementia team, become COPE certified, and support underserved communities in Arizona. So 2 doctors here in Arizona, Dr. Anna Burke and Dr. Jerry Hall, work at Barrows Neurological Institute, and they have put together a really nice workbook that is available to anybody, any patients. And they came up with a kind of a definition of dementia that we like here at Oakwood Creative Care. So that is, dementia is an umbrella term describing a broad category of symptoms indicating there is an illness damaging the brain. It is not a specific diagnosis. The term simply indicates that there are changes in thinking, so cognitive changes, that are affecting a person's ability to function as they did before. So we're going to go through key characteristics for early detection and what that may look like. So one of them is memory loss that disrupts daily life. So the reason we want to look at this is one of the most common signs of Alzheimer's disease, especially in the early stages, is forgetting recently learned information. Others include forgetting important dates or events, asking the same question over and over, and increasingly needing to rely on memory aids. So things like reminder notes or electronic devices, or family members for things that they used to be able to handle on their own. So a typical age-related change is sometimes forgetting names or appointments, but then remembering them later. So actually forgetting altogether is a sign of dementia. The next one is challenges in planning or problem solving. And this one is important because some people living with dementia may experience changes in their ability to develop and follow a plan or work with numbers. They may have trouble following a familiar recipe or keeping track of monthly bills. They may also have difficulty concentrating on a task that may usually have not taken them that long before, but now it does. So a typical age-related change would be more like making occasional errors when managing finances or household bills, not having the ability to process that information and to be able to deal with those tasks. The next one is difficulty completing familiar tasks. So people with Alzheimer's often find it hard to complete daily tasks. Sometimes they may have trouble driving to familiar locations, organizing a grocery list, or remembering the rules of a favorite game. So typical age-related changes would be more occasionally needing help to use the microwave settings or to record a TV show, but not needing the process to be, they'll need help with the process to be completed, so they can't just initiate themselves. And then when we go into the next one, confusions with time or place. So this one's a pretty big one. So people living with Alzheimer's can lose track of dates, seasons, and the passage of time. For some people, they may have trouble understanding if something is not happening immediately, or if we're doing it right now. They may forget where they are or how they got there. So a typical age-related change would be getting confused about the day of the week, but then being able to figure that out later. So another one is trouble understanding visual images and spatial relations. So this one's really interesting. For some people, having a vision problem is a sign of Alzheimer's. This may lead to difficulty with balance or trouble reading. They may also have problems judging distances and determining color or contrast, causing issues with driving often. So got to be careful of driving. A typical age-related change would be more visions related to cataracts or aging of the eye, so presbyopia. Another sign is new problems with words and speaking or writing. And people living with Alzheimer's may have trouble following or joining a conversation. They may stop in the middle of a conversation and have no idea how to continue, or they may repeat themselves. They may struggle with vocabulary, have trouble naming a familiar object, or use the wrong name, calling a watch a hand clock. So typical age-related changes would be more like sometimes having trouble finding the right word. So, oh, it's on the tip of my tongue, but I just can't quite remember it. Next one, misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. So a person living with Alzheimer's disease may put things in unusual places. They may lose things and be unable to go back over their steps to find them again. He or she may accuse others of stealing things, especially as the disease progresses. So the typical age-related change for this would be misplacing things from time to time, but then being able to retrace your steps to find them. So not knowing where they are altogether is significant. The next one is decreased and or poor judgment. So individuals may experience changes in judgment or decision-making. For example, they may use poor judgment with dealing with money or pay less attention to grooming or keeping themselves clean. So a typical age-related change would be more like making a bad decision or a mistake once in a while, like neglecting to change the oil in the car. So smaller mistakes here, not daily mistakes. The next one is withdrawal from work or social engagements. So a person living with Alzheimer's disease may experience changes in the ability to hold or follow a conversation. As a result, he or she may withdraw from hobbies, social activities, and other engagements. They may have trouble keeping up with a favorite team or activity, but a typical age-related change would be more like sometimes feeling uninterested in a family or social obligation. So I just don't really feel like going type thing. Number 10, changes in mood or personality. So individuals with Alzheimer's may experience mood and personality changes. They can become upset, confused, suspicious, depressed, fearful, or anxious. They may be easily upset at home, with friends, or when out of their comfort zone. So a typical age-related change would be more like developing very specific ways of doing things and becoming irritable when a routine is disrupted. So it's definitely do not disrupt our routines, right? But that is one of the signifiers there for a normal age-related change. So next we're going to go into some statistics for Arizona. So these are all from the Arizona statistics sheet for 2023, and it's from the Alzheimer's Association website. So right now we have 150,000 people aged 65 and older that are currently living with Alzheimer's in Arizona. 8.9% of the people aged 45 and older have subjective cognitive decline, so starting to show signs. 261,000 family caregivers bear the burden of the disease in Arizona. So we have a lot of familiar caregivers here. 511 million hours of unpaid care are provided by to for Alzheimer's by caregivers in Arizona. 10.8 billion is the value of unpaid care. So if we had to pay those people, that's what it would look like. And 414 million is the cost of Alzheimer's to the state Medicaid programs. So we're spending a lot of money right now. And then when we look at the high costs and effective caregiving, the estimated number of caregivers for people with Alzheimer's and other dementias is approximately 11.2 million. And currently caregivers provide 18 billion hours of unpaid care, and that was from 2022. And that's roughly valued at about $340 billion to people living with Alzheimer's and other dementias. 2/3 of those caregivers are women. And the prevalence of depression is higher among these dementia caregivers, about 30 to 40% than other caregivers, such as those who provide help to individuals with schizophrenia, stroke, or other developmental delays. So we have an idea of how we can help our caregivers, and that's what we're going to be talking about next. So why COPE? The COPE program is a model that was developed to support the caregivers and to support the person living with dementia and help them remain at home for as long as possible. It provides families with disease education and care management strategies, along with comprehensive health screenings. So those are often done in the first couple of visits. The occupational therapist will utilize knowledge and skills to address care challenges that matter to the individuals involved. So it's very client-specific. And family-centric as well. The program is flexible and tailored to the family. A home evaluation is completed to identify ways to improve independence in the home, including fall risks and safety concerns. The goal of the program is to enhance the functioning of the person living with dementia while allowing the caregiver to become more autonomous. So a lot of really beautiful goals here. So the program. COPE is designed to address the clinical symptoms of dementia, including behavioral and psychological symptoms, functional dependence, and caregiver distress. And it is completed in 3 different phases. So we're going to go through those 3 phases together. So the most important part of this project to me was the fact that the occupational therapist gets to complete 10 out of 14 of these visits. And they are people that are health and social care professionals who enable others to live life their way. That was one of my favorite kind of summations of what OT does. So OTs assist with participation in activities of daily living to help those suffering from dementia to remain as independent as possible. So when we're looking at phase 1, you're going to be assessing the person living with dementia and the caregiver. So for the person living with dementia, we're looking at cognitive function, physical function, fall risk, medication regime, and physical health. With the caregiver, we're looking at communication styles and identified care challenges. So the approach to assessment reflects a family-centric, strength-based treatment approach from which to tailor the program to the family needs. So it's very client-specific. And then an occupational therapist can provide help in training and undertaking daily activities such as bathing, dressing, eating, playing, and participating in a favorite hobby. The occupational therapist's role is to provide education and training to care partners on how to modify the environment to better meet the needs of the person with dementia. This may include providing guidance on lighting, noise levels, or furniture placement, as well as strategies for managing behavioral symptoms. OTs work with their clients to find solutions to remove or minimize barriers, enabling optimal function. OTs consider the physical, cognitive, and affective and spiritual dimensions of the client's occupational goals and performance, and have a unique focus on the social, cultural, and physical aspects of the environment in terms of how it can either be enhanced or interfere with occupational engagement. So we have a really unique role here to help the family. So how occupational therapists support dementia patients is through assessments and screenings. They're going to identify deficits and strengths in cognition and assess how these impact the ability to function in day-to-day life. So ADLs, mobility, social skills, leisure, pursuits and IADLs. So how do OTs support these dementia patients? Well, they are going to monitor the progress of the person with dementia and their care partner to ensure that the intervention being implemented is effective in improving the quality of life and reducing behavioral symptoms. So many of these interventions and strategies will look different as we implement them. So one is cueing, so kind of gesturing towards the person, placing a hand, pointing, not really using words. So cueing is more demonstration. The next would be more modification of the environment. So really going in and looking at what's working and what's not working to help facilitate the independence of the person living with dementia. So that could look like signage or creating kind of a small station for them to utilize their day. So maybe having their remote, a book, lighting, different things that they might need all within their reach. And then the other thing is to really talk about communication strategies. And that a lot of the times is something more important for the care partner as we are trying to de-escalate situations or try to understand. We work on breathing techniques with our care partners to try to de-escalate like stressful situations. So communication strategies are really a big part of the program. And then we try to make realistic goals so that we can increase the independence of the person living with dementia and perhaps help them with ADLs, mobility, any way to regain independence in the home that might be able to be done with just a simple fix. So something we can change that maybe somebody else didn't see. And then this is a picture that is taken from the COPE training, and it kind of breaks down the sessions so you get to see kind of what they look like. So the first phase is the assessment phase. So that's what we were just kind of talking about. And then phase 2, we go into implementation. So that is where we're looking at the challenges of the family, we're brainstorming, we're coming up with ideas, we're figuring out activities that would be great for the person living with dementia to help maybe relieve that boredom, make them feel purposeful. And then we use something called COPE prescriptions, and we'll be going into that, which really give good guidance to the care partner, but also kind of outline how to implement whatever challenges we're trying to address. And then our final stage is generalization, and we're using this to kind of check in where we've gotten to, see where we want to go, and make sure that if we need to modify any of our strategies, we can, so that this family is successful. So one of my favorite parts of the COPE program is the 17 assessments that are conducted within the first 2 visits. And I find this fascinating. There is not a program out there right now where an OT gets to go through 17 different assessments with a family. And so I actually listed them all out here for us so we could take a look. So the first one here, you're going to see that we're definitely looking at the background characteristics, health and well-being of both the person living with dementia and the caregiver. We're going to look at daily routines and activities. The depression screening is for the care partner. We do check out the perceived change index. We look at assessments of physical function. We assess executive function, look at behaviors and psychological symptoms, check out an activity inventory, do a caregiver assessment of health, and then always a medication review. And that is completed by here a PA, but could be a nurse. And then we have a couple tests that are done specifically to the person living with dementia. So we've got the timed up and go, checking out mobility, the functional cognitive assessment. So just seeing what that cognitive level is. A pain assessment, skin integrity, and blood and urine sample are all done by the PA, but the OT is going to bring out the labs and the order forms to get that started. So what we're looking at is any cause for concern, anything we might need to jump at immediately, and then any deficits. So nutritional deficits is often something that we find, or perhaps a UTI, so things that we're looking for. And then we go into the observation of comportment. So that's a really interesting one. It's kind of how that person with dementia is greeting you and what their cognition for that looks like. Readiness to change is more for the caregiver and kind of seeing where they are in the process with understanding dementia and caring for their care partner. And then we do a checklist of observing strategies just to kind of see where that caregiver is. And then there's always a home assessment that is performed to make sure that we're safe and sound and to assess that fall risk. So what is cognition? So when we're thinking about that, it's the ability to learn new information. And sometimes that's something that starts to go with certain dementias. We use cognition to reason and problem solve. We use our cognition to sustain focus and attention, which you will notice starts to decline with persons living with dementia. We use our cognition to recall items, so that one can start to go as well. And then our ability to maintain short and long-term memory. So you'll notice that short-term memory generally goes first, and that is something that's more notable and able to be identified more than if we're having long-term memory issues, which generally doesn't happen right away. So the next thing we're going to look at is the screenings. So we're going to do screenings throughout this process. And the first one is the functional cognitive assessment. So that one is an evidence-based assessment of functional cognition associated with the cognitive disabilities model. And right now we're doing a few different assessments. So the leather lacing is one of them to assess our persons living with dementia. And then the ADM is an evidence-based standardized assessment of functional cognition developed within a framework of cognitive disabilities model. It does have 34 craft-based activities, which provide opportunities for the individual to do and to see how they problem solve a meaningful activity, and then see what they produce is what they made useful, safe, and attractive as an end product. So this has been interesting. Here, Monica is having them do a placemat, create a visor, which is very appropriate for Arizona. And then we also have this tile trivet one. So when you do look through the ADM2 book at all the options for what the person can possibly do, you have a lot to choose from. So definitely a cool line of standardized assessments that can be tailored to wherever you are. And then the last one is the sensory stimulation kit. And these items are going to help assess olfactory, visual, auditory, tactile functions. We're going to look at essentially how the person is adapting and facilitating responses to these sensory stimuli, and seeing if we are having actually like oversensitivity to stimuli or maybe undersensitivity, and if it's actually a sensory processing situation that we can help address through perhaps headphones or changing lighting or tactile pressure, things like that. So lots of really cool things with the sensory stimulation kit. And then now we're into phase 2. So we're in the implementation phase. So we're going to go over those assessment results. We're going to address the caregiver's challenges, and then we're going to use those activity prescriptions that I was talking about to kind of tailor a way to problem solve through whatever barrier we are dealing with. So some of the strategies that are done in phase 2 are dealing with communication, so how we communicate with each other, addressing cueing, so what that might look like, and I kind of explained that a little bit before, but you're kind of gently touching, motioning, giving cues to what's next to help the person move along. We've got behavioral management. So we do have a lot of patients that tend to get upset, or maybe the other way. So how do we address those feelings, and what does that look like? And then self-management. So trying to give them tools to remain independent. Like for dressing, this could look like stacking the clothes in the proper order of how you put them on. We're going to go over common behaviors, so things that are normal for this disease progression, and kind of letting the caregiver and the care partner know what to expect, that this is a normal thing. Education through this process is pivotal. It's a big deal. A lot of care partners don't know what they're looking for, or don't realize that what's happening is a problem with the disease. We're going to try to simplify tasks. So the easier, the better. Trying to make those control stations was one. So If you're gonna, be sitting in a certain chair for the day, just having everything next to you that you're going to need, perhaps setting things out if we're doing a cooking task. So just really trying to downgrade tasks so that we can be successful and we can be engaged and we can still complete them together. Also looking at home safety protocols. So a lot of those type of things are lighting, clutter, trying to just make sure we don't have fall risks within the house, and also just making sure our environments are conducive to, our mind. And if things are hard to find and very cluttered and we get up in the middle of the night, we don't want to have any accidents. And then a big part of this program is future planning. We call this Plan B. So what happens to the care partner if they perhaps have something happen to them? And then what happens to the person living with dementia? Do we have a backup plan? Do we know what that looks like? And planning that future plan with the person living with dementia is great if they are able to do so. I think it's something that's very powerful because then they kind of get to determine maybe what it looks like for me down the road. And then local resources. So tapping the client into the day clubs that we have, the support groups that we have, funding options, respite care, introducing them to what hospice is and what that may look like, and just trying to provide resources and education. So a lot of the time, or at least what I've heard from many of the clients, is that they, find out their loved one has dementia and then they just get a million materials just handed to them, and it's just too much for them to digest. So really taking the time to do this one-on-one, have this rapport, and be able to share information is really important for dealing with this disease. And then in phase 2, we're going to be doing some skills training. So skills training is a problem-solving and brainstorming approach that is very specific to the co-program. And what we're doing is we're simplifying that communication. We're simplifying the tasks. So it doesn't have to be done perfectly. If they're still engaging with it, let them go. Don't tell them they need to do it this way or that way. Another thing is modifying the environment. So if we are doing something, making everything available to them or setting them up for success. So that cooking example. And then activity engagement. So what we're trying to do is try to find ways to get the person involved with purposeful activities at home to relieve some of that boredom, bring joy into the life, and then give the caregiver some reprieve. So if we can come up with ways to engage the client that the caregiver can also facilitate at home, that's really helpful. So activity engagement is something that is very powerful, but it has a lot to do with the caregiver's readiness to try new things and kind of where they are in the understanding of the disease progression. And then we've got education. So like I was telling you, that is one of the biggest, I think, important things that sometimes just doesn't happen with. You get the diagnosis, you're rushing, your wife's busy, you've got your kids, you're doing a million things, and you don't know that they've got, potential effects of polypharmacy, or that they've been in pain and they just haven't told you, or that they haven't had a bowel movement in multiple days, or they've barely been sipping water, if at all. And then we talk about like stress reduction techniques for deep breathing, taking a walk, taking time for yourself. So making sure you prioritize self-care. So trying to put your face mask on the plane before you put on the person you're taking care of. So that's a really good example. And then once again, those home safety concerns and recommendations. So with technology, this can look like putting a GPS tracker on the person, putting cameras in the home, putting noise alarms on the doors, perhaps locking the doors if necessary, hiding the driving keys if we need to. A lot of different things that are going to help us stay safe and then also just prevent any possible accidents down the road. And then these are a list of the current activity prescriptions that are available through COPE. And I found this extremely fascinating and wanted to share it. So these are a lot of the things that caregivers come to the program and they say, oh my gosh, I'm having the hardest time right now getting him to dress. So he will put his clothes on, but he won't take them off. Or Grooming, I can't get him to, brush his hair. He won't let me touch his hair, or I can't get him in or out of the shower, or I put him in the shower and he won't get out of the shower. So there's a lot of interesting things that can happen. And so what do we do? How do we redirect that behavior? How do we figure out, what to do with physical aggression? So what do we do with that? So that's what these prescriptions really help identify, different tools and tricks that can be utilized. And then these are a couple other ones. So we have, toileting, sexually inappropriate behaviors, rummaging or hoarding, that can be one. Maybe perhaps taking something from somewhere, not meaning to steal, but you do take something. So that was something that a care partner expressed in group that said, yeah, I kind of knew something was going on because he brought something home from work that he shouldn't have taken. And that was a huge sign to me that something was going on. So very interesting there. Then we're going to look into session 3. So session 1 and 2 was kind of like get to know you. We're going to gather all this information. We're going to do all these assessments. We're going to check out your health. We're going to have the PA look in your meds. We're going to check out your blood, your urine. We're really going to get a full picture of you guys. And so after that has happened, we're going to introduce stress reduction techniques, and that is done in the beginning of every visit. We're going to discuss the use of activities, so why it's important to have activities. And then we're going to provide them with the assessments. So what was taken in the first 2 visits and what that looks like. And so we're going to go over that assessment with them, see if they have any questions about it. And then what we're going to do is start to tackle one of the problem areas that they're having. So that is done through problem solving and brainstorming with them. And we do role playing with the caregiver. We try to get them as ready as possible to tackle whatever problem that may be. So we're going to provide them with strategies, and then we're going to practice with them. And then sessions 4 through 8 look pretty similar to session 3. So you're definitely going to start with stress reduction. You're going to see how that's working. You're going to review the assessment reports, so anything that may need to be changed. You're going to go over the COPE prescriptions. So those were the areas of concern, the brainstorming, the problem solving. And we're going to see how these prescriptions help with our inability to toilet or grooming or dressing or whatever area has been identified. Then we're going to identify other problem areas and areas that we can address with the caregiver. So we're going to practice those skills and make sure that we're on the same page. And then we're going to review the progress. So how's it been going? Are these prescriptions working? What do we need to change? Have you used it? And validate the person and reinforce what they're doing, because what they're doing is really difficult, and we realize that. And then phase 3 is called generalizability. And this phase is what we're doing to kind of make sure we have followed the program completely to meet the needs of the family. So we're going to meet with the caregiver alone. We're going to talk about what we've learned together, strategies that are working, challenges we might see coming up in the future, and then understand, where this disease process is going and what that may look like, so that they know. So with this, we've got problem solving, active learning. We need to be culturally relevant, and it is tailored specifically to the client and the family. And then in the 9th visit, we are going to kind of go over those reduction techniques. So this is the generalizability stage. And then we're going to go through everything. So have the prescriptions been working? Have the activities been working? Are there other problems we need to identify? Are there strategies we can generate together? And we're going to give them as much support as we can, and also that future planning. And then session 10, kind of the same idea, but what we're doing here is we're just really trying to make sure we're leaving the person with the best tools possible so that they can identify problems and challenges and tackle them themselves, or reach out for support if they need to. So this is outcome measures that were taken from places that the program has been run. A lot of this has been done on the East Coast so far. And what you're seeing there is the caregivers are feeling more confident. They're being able to improve their personal well-being. They become less upset. They are able to, understand what is causing behaviors and or problems within the home. And then with the person living with dementia, we can kind of help them gain some of that independence back if we can come up with ways to downgrade tasks and simplify daily activities so they can perform them themselves. And then we're really trying to improve that activity engagement, so giving them purposeful, meaningful things to do. And with that comes an increased quality of life. So these programs are really important, especially for, not only caring for our persons living with dementia, but for our care partner, because they really do need the support. And then another area that has kind of come up through this process is what it looks like to take care of a person that does have dementia, but also has an intellectual disability. So what does that look like? So common things, we might have confusions and problems with recent memory, wandering or getting lost in familiar places, shuffling, bladder or bowel control loss, laughing or crying inappropriately, difficulty following instructions, loss of speech, disorientation, loss of daily living skills, changes in personality, long periods of inactivity or apathy, or perhaps the development of seizures. So this is all specific to persons with IDD. And when we're looking at that, what we need to do is kind of adapt the evidence for persons with IDD and dementia. So non-pharmaceutical strategies are going to be the best way to tackle this demographic. And there's many ways to many. So what that means is one size does not fit all. And so there's no real magic pill. There's not one way to, use an activity prescription. There's many ways to get to the same goal. And that's a big takeaway of this program. So we want to consider the disease trajectory, etiology, life course, familiar and living context, unmet needs, pre-morbid abilities and interests. So all of these specific to the developmental delay. And then we want to look at principles for intervening, how we can make this person and family centered, tailoring the preferences of the care partner to help the person living with dementia facilitate independence better, and then problem solving. So really a lot of the techniques are similar, but we are just kind of adapting the scope and our understanding to deal with this particular demographic. And then in summary, the purposes and principles. So the COPE program aims to support individuals with dementia by focusing on their unique needs, abilities, and environment. The principles include person-centered care, environmental modifications, meaningful activities, caregiver collaboration, and interdisciplinary teamwork. The benefits of this program is it does enhance the well-being and quality of life for the individuals with dementia. It improves engagement and socialization, reduces behavioral symptoms and agitation, and supports the caregivers and the family members in their roles. So this program not only helps the family, but it is a really nice community support. So we do run the COPE program here at Oakwood Creative Care and also have a caregiver support group. And through those groups, it's kind of people helping people. And so really having a network and relying on others and finding places like a dementia hub here in Arizona is the best way to try to, get in front of this disease process and to educate the masses. So how to get involved. So if you'd like to be COPE certified, there is the Drexel Education online course there that you can take. I did take it. It is a great course, and there's a lot to be learned. So it's very fruitful. The Dementia Friends training is also a wonderful resource. We did this through school, and they do run it here at the Dementia Hub. So that's a really cool thing to take as well. And then there is a AOTA Dementia Practitioner Community of Practice that has just begun for dementia. And I think we've had 3 meetings thus far, so it's a very new group. You do need to be a member of AOTA, but it is something I highly recommend joining and has some of the biggest wigs in the industry on it currently. Skills to Care is another evidence-based practice that can help benefit persons living with dementia and is something that you can also become certified in. The Dementia Squad is the local task force here in Arizona, and you can join those as a volunteer and just stay in touch with the community in those ways. Volunteering at any adult day club. So I've listed the 3 here at Oakwood. Those are the top 3. And then there's Benavia. So there's 3 locations in Surprise, Arizona as well. They are not running the COPE program, just FYI. And then these are some dementia resources. So Monica has, we've used some of these here. So the Barrows Neurological Institute, that was the handout I was talking, the spiral binder that's free resource for patients that was done by Dr. Burke and Jerry Hall. And then we've got Managing Behavioral Symptoms in Dementia. So this is also a spiral book that can be facilitated to families, and it's written well and it's easy to access. So it's a nice resource. We also have our website at Oakwood Creative Care here, the Dementia Society, and then there are some videos from COPE that you can take a look at and see if this is something you're interested in. And then there are some references from today. And that is my presentation. I hope you enjoyed.